Peace and blessings. This is Misael Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, coming at you once again with another episode of Raw Talk. So today I thought we'd get it back more into the shamanic vein of things and, just keep it flowing. And one of the big discussions that's been in science for the past couple of years is artificial intelligence. You know what I'm saying? And if you guys ever get a chance to purchase it, definitely get the Moabitess stone. It was written by myself, Warlock Asylum, but it has some really good information. Um, there's a couple of chapters that touch on a couple of things, but basically, the Moabitess stone is actually uh, a version of the genealogy of God. Another book I wrote that really got banned. That's a whole other story. I have to do a whole other show on one day. But the book got banned, so I had to kind of insert the information in the Moabitess Stone. So if you ever get a chance to get that book, the Moabitess Stone by Warlock Asylum, it has like a Moorish overtone to it. Um, I want the brothers to be able to get some information that's not really readily available. And, it's good for people who are spiritualists, scientists, religious. It talks about an array of subjects. But one thing that it gets into that definitely goes into our discussion about artificial intelligence is man's deception of what intelligence is. A lot of times we look at animals, insects, the elements, the planets, and everything. And man is smarter than all of that, right? And here's something to think about, though. All those things that we mentioned, like as far as like animals and stuff, there exist, especially when you look at the insect world, there exist um, things that live outside the perception of those creatures. For example, there's things that live outside the physical perception of plants. So a lot of human beings live through life thinking that the only thing that is real is what is in their sensory perception. So, like with studies about esotericism and stuff, it was to create a certain awareness beyond the five senses so one could see the world truly as it is. And if you don't have that type of understanding or whatever, it can get kind of hectic as far as you trying to find your place in the universe, your purpose, all those sort of things. So I didn't want to digress too much, but I did want to make some notations about the book. Um, this conversation about artificial intelligence and the forces behind it are not human. It's not really like a conspiracy theory video. It just came out of a conversation that it was an interview actually that I had. I'm gonna try to see if I could find the interview and post it in the description. It was an interview I had with this tech dude. I mean, this dude was real swift in tech, and he kept pushing this stuff about AI. So I hit him with an experience about something that goes on in nature, because nature also has cases of artificial intelligence and its use for thousands of years, and he couldn't answer that question. You know what I'm saying? And so I kind of, you know, it was fine because he's trying to plug what he's trying to plug because he's in business. He has to make a living. I get it. You know, I just want to kind of give you some insight as far as where the conversation was coming from. So in any event, I have two views on artificial intelligence, and the reason I'm going to state this now is because it's very beneficial as far as where we're going, and just to get a look at certain things or whatever. And in true shamanism, the intelligence of man is in many creatures. It's just that their physical composition is different, so their mode of expression may seem different from ours, but when you really study these creatures, it's the same. Okay, so let's talk about artificial intelligence and what what does it really mean, and what is it a sign of? Like what's coming into the earth? You see what I'm saying? Not to get biblical, I'm not. Well, I shouldn't say that, but I just say like the Bible's a very old book, and a lot of people know the creation story, so it's a generally known story. So I'm going to reference it. Okay, and when you look in Genesis chapter 1, you could see certain things taking place after each creative day because the mind of humanity is descending down. And just like, you're going to move into a home, you're going to prepare the home before you move into it. You know what I'm saying? And so this was the case in Genesis chapter 1. Now we see all of this stuff with technology and electronica and stuff like that going on. So what is coming into this world? That's something that we have to look at because historically, I'm sure there's societies that were very advanced. There's legends of those things, and that's not to be discounted. However, as far as having hard facts historically, maybe that's a little bit of a different story. But it's very, very, very interesting. So I just want to touch on that or whatever. But to get back into this conversation about artificial intelligence, there's examples in the insect world that can tell us possibly where AI is coming from, right? You have an example of a voodoo wasp. Okay, this is a real. I've seen this on. You might be able to catch it on YouTube, but I'm sure if you Google voodoo wasp, you can find a ton of information. Literally a voodoo wasp. And why is it called a voodoo wasp? It's because it can manipulate the behavior of other insects to its own advantage. For example, a voodoo wasp will land on a spider's web, and the spider will come out thinking that it caught, some prey, some food or whatever. And when the spider get near the wasp, it will sting it. Okay. Now, at this point, the spider is unconscious. So what the voodoo wasp will do for those that carry larvae, it would sew its larva to the spider's abdomen, right? Okay. Now, um, when the spider wakes up, it doesn't realize what happened. So it just goes about its business doing whatever. And during this time, the larva is feeding off of the spider. However, the larva, before it goes into its next stage, it needs a cocoon. And guess who's going to make it? The spider. So what it does is when it gets strong enough, it stings the spider, and the spider makes a web that it has never made before. I mean, this is fascinating, right? And once it completes the web, the larva, now developed into its next stage, will mount the spider and kill it. Now, what does all of this have to do with um, artificial intelligence? Well, similar to the spider making the web, man is making things that we have no historical record that he's made before. Maybe um, there's some things I could say I'm going to talk about later in the video because I don't, I want to give the full possibilities of everything. Okay, so he's making a web that he's never made before. Now, it's one thing if man's moral level, his focus, um, the human community was getting along a lot better than it is now, then I could say, hey, this dude, he's striving because of all these things. For example, like if you look at health, for example, smiling is good for you. It's good for your body. You see what I'm saying? But if you live in an environment where ain't too much smiling going on and there's advancements being made in technology, then something's not matching up. It's like you read these books with I am philosophy, say affirmations, this, that, and the other. And, it makes sense. And you get to see how holding certain qualities can work against you in life, all that sort of thing. So if you see mankind and he's not excelling in certain arenas, and then he can excel in technology, I don't know. Maybe something is is not happening right. You know what I'm saying? So there could be another force that could be man's predator that is getting ready to make him, man is making him a cocoon, so that he can hatch out of. That's a possibility. Whatever this thing is. I mean, this dude discovered electricity, and we read about certain creatures that are made of smokeless fire. That sounds like electricity. So now, once that's discovered, all of these things that are made out of this smokeless fire, this electricity, could be a home for something else. It's just something to think about. In my personal opinion, everyone knows, I deal with mystical arts and that sort of thing. So we have what we call the Nzulu calendar, the Naya-Zirian calendar. And right now it's at 18,000. The year is 18,007. And we're getting ready to go into 18,008 shortly. So a lot of times people wonder, like, what's this calendar based on? It's based on a 26,000 year cycle when the earth wobbles. So we're about 8,000 years away from that wobbling again. Why I'm bringing this up is because it's possible that man did achieve certain heights that are not recorded in history. And when the earth wobbled, you get this thing where a lot of people died, because at the end of Genesis chapter 1, I think it's verse 28 or whatever, it says, multiply and replenish the earth, which means that the earth was inhabited before. Regardless of how people feel about the Bible, it's like an ancient document. Still in all, I know that all this stuff comes out of the Mesopotamian, the ancient Sumerian and Babylonian mythologies, which I'm initiated in. So I know this well. I'm just trying to explain to the viewer who may not have this knowledge. Okay. So, if the earth was to wobble, a lot of people would get killed. Most of the stuff that was built will be destroyed. And, maybe there are some higher intelligent forces that will come and assist man to get started again. That makes sense. You know what I'm saying? That's a possibility. Another possibility that I thought of was that, man could be growing into, you know, like that alien form that he fantasizes about or that he sees on television and, all that sort of stuff, that all that we see on television, I should say. And man is growing into that. So his stage of discovering technology is like a child learning how to walk or talk. Like he reached that stage to get out of nature and to be able to, whatever. And looks like that's the direction that he's going in. Still in all, we still have to concern ourselves with why is technology not used in the benefit of man's survival overall? There's greed, there's certain things that may have to pass, you know what I'm saying? But if you give any living being something before its time or its senses have developed, it can use that same thing to kill itself. So those are just some things that I want to say and talk about on the level of artificial intelligence. But if you ever want to really get some insight, into the human condition and what could be affecting him, look at insect parasite relationships because they can tell you everything. Insects are extremely intelligent, and to show you how intelligent they are, there were workings, theoretical papers about the psychic powers of insects, and just a whole bunch of stuff that just stopped at like 1900. And when I was working on the genealogy of God, I couldn't figure, like, man, why is this big gap, like a 90-year gap in the field of study on insects? I mean, you would have studies about the biological aspects of insects, like how many legs they got, how big is the brain, stuff like that. However, how these ideas about insects having psychic powers or just some of the communal, how they interacted in the community was halted. You know why it was halted? Because evolution, the theory, doesn't have a place for insects. It really doesn't. It doesn't have a place for insects. You can get 1,001 answers. Oh, they came 5 million years ago. Or they, this, that, and the other. But they don't really have a solid understanding of insects that doesn't interfere with the theory of evolution. So what they did when the theory of evolution, like, we're going to take this and run with this, I'm going to tell you why the theory of evolution is very important. They stopped and abandoned all research into the intelligence of insects. Now, here's why the theory of evolution is very important. The theory of evolution is very important because that's how scientists make money. You make a theory that you cannot prove. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of stuff that people call science now is about some dude working in the lab trying to secure his income. It's the same thing with law or other things. These dudes make laws to put people in prison, all this other crazy stuff, or, whatever, to make money. You know what I'm saying? So science is supposed to be the study of facts. But if you're not really looking into stuff on a deeper level, you can call that a day. You know what I'm saying? Because this is about making money. So you have several theories. Out of Africa theories also used to make money. You can't say where a person is from or a race of people or whole humanity unless you dig up different parts of the earth. You know what I'm saying? And then here's the thing where a lot of people understand, they like, oh man, Africa, da da whatever, but they don't understand that when they're talking about life out of Africa, they're talking about apes. So that's even more insulting. But a lot of people don't get it. So in order for you to believe in a like out of Africa theory, you gotta believe that man came from apes. So you see like a lot of people, some in the conscious community, maybe some studying some Islamic studies or, some avant-garde stuff, and they're trying to think, about, okay, the Asiatic man and all this kind of stuff, and maybe one that, at one time, Asia Minor, so Africa was Asia Major. No, it's just that they're talking about apes coming out of Africa. If you really want to understand why, you know, um, life was said to originate in Asia and what it has to do in comparison to the out of Africa theory, you look at what ancient historians wrote and you can see exactly what happened. Ancient historians in Greece and Rome, and I have the notes, they said that the Canaanites was pushed into Africa. And it's just that simple. They're the inhabitants of West Africa, the Canaanites. That's what it says by certain scholars who live in the 3rd and 4th century BCE in Greece. Okay? There's no one saying anything else. You know what I'm saying? In South Africa, the people that live in there look at the original people as the Sand people. And the Sand people have a story of migration. And I'm just saying all this just to show you how science can throw a wrench. Modern science is throwing a wrench in every single form of academic study to date. So if you don't think for yourself, you're going to be following a religion under a telescope. You know what I'm saying? And that's just what that's about. You know what I mean? So not to digress too much, I'm just not like a long video, but I just want to kind of make some things clear about artificial intelligence and just the intelligence of life around us, you can find out the human condition based on observing that or studying that. For example, people, you know, a lot of things to talk about race and racism, I'm saying, the human condition, the struggle for survival. I know one thing, I know that ants bury their dead. Ants bury the dead in the same type of format that humans do, and they actually have a procession. But here's the thing that the quote unquote scientists don't understand. They don't understand that why do ants separate the worker ants from the slave master ants? They won't bury the slave master ants in the same place that they bury the worker ants. Interesting. You have another situation where you had um, some giraffes in certain parts of Africa that was just dying, and they couldn't figure out, like, man, why the giraffes are dying. Then they figured out what happened because it was spotted. It wasn't like consistent when they was digging the reports up. So you had like a group of giraffes over here, and then there was a group in the middle, 50 miles away. They were good, but a group 100 miles away, they were going through the same thing. So the scientists was trying to figure out, like, man, what's going on with these giraffes or whatever. So they found out that there was these acacia trees, and when the giraffes start eating the leaves of the acacia tree, it start filling itself, this particular type of acacia tree, with poison. Its leaves were poison, so the giraffes were dying. But not only did the acacia trees fill itself with poison, they sent a signal to other acacia trees that weren't being attacked, but when they got the message, they filled themselves up with poison. You understand what I'm saying? So it was like that, and that teaches us a lot about human behavior, because in the spiritual world, there are some things that latch on to the human psyche or the human that can affect its behavior. I'll give you an example. Suicide at one time wasn't really that popular. Today it's very popular. There's a worm, a parasite, that will enter a grasshopper. It's like the size of needle thread, you know what I'm saying? And it will enter a grasshopper's body, and it will actually change the proteins in the grasshopper's brain. Now, why it's changing the proteins in the grasshopper's brain is because it has to lay eggs in water, and it's using the grasshopper as a vehicle to get the water. So once it changes the proteins, I know this is crazy, it's like a scientist itself, right? The grasshopper will commit suicide by jumping in water. All right. And so when you see people or hear about people committing suicide, other than the dude that was hooking up these young girls and stuff with these important people, pretty much it could be a case of where something has latched itself on to an individual. Another case is nymphomaniac. A nymphomaniac, excessive sexual desire. You have a larva that usually mates about once a month. And there's a germ that will enter the larva that, which I guess to survive, it needs to pass through the larva with some kind of way or something. But the bottom line is that in order for it to do what it's got to do to pass to another larva, it increases the sexual desire of the larva. So the larva that would normally be having sex like once a month is now having sex like 3 times a day. So these archetypes can tell us about human behavior and also different human situations. You know what I'm saying? So that's why insect study, as far as communal and other things, if you notice, there were 2 species or living beings that was talked about heavily in ancient scripture, and that was insects, communal insects like bees and ants, and also birds. You didn't really hear too much about a parable with a dog or stuff like the like mammal type of creatures. It was always like insects and birds, because birds also have a high degree of intelligence. Crows have a high degree of intelligence. There's an article online, and in the article, there was a girl that was giving crows food, and the crows went out and found jewelry for the girl. They were bringing her jewelry back because she was feeding them. So crows are very intelligent. I've seen crows, their environment is being encroached upon because of building and, all sorts of construction. So they have to find their food differently. And I've seen crows, get a nut and they will get on the traffic light and they would drop the nut into traffic because they know the car will run over it. But then they had to realize that, the cars are moving, so they might get, you know, ran over. So what they did is that they observed traffic and realized that we can go down during the stoplight and get the nut, so we have to drop it in the crosswalk. That's how smart crows are. There's another situation where a guy, he attacked, a herd of crows, and it wasn't good for him. Every day this dude was leaving his house, the crows was attacking him. Then he tried all these disguises, the crows were still attacking him. However, the researchers and scientists, what they couldn't figure out was that the guy had went to another location, and there was these other crows different than the original who started attacking the dude. Then, after a little bit more research, they realized that the first set of crows told the second set of crows how this dude looked, smelled, and everything. And so these other crows start attacking the guy. And that's intelligence, right? So crows have a language of over 200 calls. You know what I'm saying? So they can really communicate and stuff like that. And they live much like humans. I mean, if crows have young, when they leave the nest to go, for food and stuff, either the older brothers or the grandparents will watch the newborn. Crows are very intelligent. I've seen a crow trying to put an ATM card, a credit card into an ATM machine. Right, so crows are extremely intelligent, and like scientists, when they have like the two steps test, and then they have like another step, crows match the ability of a 5-year-old child. So a 5-year-old child can do a lot of different things, and this is what crows are dealing with. Maybe they're even dealing with a little bit more. We don't know. You know what I'm saying? But to think that man is the only one thinking like man would be an error. There's an article I wrote on the Art of Nzulu blog page. It's called Plants Pray Also. And it's amazing because there's a form of tobacco, like a rolling tobacco, and a caterpillar is its predator. So when the caterpillar gets on it, naturally it's going to start eating its leaves. However, what this form of tobacco would do is it will release an aroma which attracts the caterpillar's predator. And this wasp or whatever will come and devour the caterpillar. And that's how this form of rolling tobacco protects itself. That's intelligence. So artificial intelligence might not be artificial at all. It could be something that could be coming from another force that's using man and manipulating the proteins in his head as well. And that's all I got for today. I'll be back shortly with another video. And I just want to touch base with y'all because, let me get on the specs for a second. I try not to wear these all the time because these are like readers, really. Um, you know, there's a lot of things going on, so just be aware of that. We don't know how it's going to go. I'm not saying That's definitely the situation, that man's being manipulated. But if he's having more problems than ever, and he's having the best technology delivered to him or coming out of his head than ever, then maybe mankind's, the proteins in his brain are being manipulated. It's just something to think about. This is Misael Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, and we're concluding another episode of Raw Talk.